Welcome back to the Big Life Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. I am your co-host, Neal Oates Jr., and today we are taking leadership lessons from a source that you might not expect. An energetic, curious, fearless 12-month-old.
I like it, folks. And my name is Robin Lewis, and this one comes straight from my grandson. Watching him explore and test and fall and try again, and now actually walking, reminded me of something profound about leadership and growth. You ready for it? I believe that we were all born with a natural, built-in growth mindset. We didn't learn it. We lived it. And somewhere along the way, many of us traded that in for fear and caution and maybe even perfectionism.
Before you go any further, Robin, you know I'm excited. You know how much I consider myself a big kid. And when people ask me, what do I want to be when I grow up? I just say a bigger kid. And so I love where we're going today, but more so, I love the humility that you and I are going to have to embody and embrace as we take these lessons from your grandson, right? And
Right on.
who is the perfect teacher, and he doesn't even know that he's teaching you and I. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to invite you to put your pride to the side, that ego, go ahead and put it down, that fear, pack all of that stuff up, because we're going to learn from Robin's grandson today. So Robin, I'm excited. Let's go, sir.
Welcome to the Big Life Podcast, where dreams aren't just imagined. They're built, brick by brick, belief by belief. Hosted by Neal Oates Jr. and Robin Lewis, this show is your invitation to discover your amazing capabilities, invest in your growth, and unleash your potential in ways you've only dreamed of. Join Neal and Robin as they dive deep into stories, insights, and tools designed to inspire you to show up big, live intentionally, and give yourself away for the betterment of those around you. Get ready to rise to what you're truly worthy of. The Big Life starts now.
Yeah, me too, man. I was sharing with Neal before we started this episode that I'm recognizing that I need to capture and live more like my 12-month grandson. His name is Jalen, by the way. But let me start with what I saw when he began walking. It wasn't just him taking the steps. It was like watching his entire world expand. Because, before walking, he lived life from the ground level or only from, where you could take him to, pretty much, right? He had to be carried or pushed or whatever, right? But he could only touch what he could crawl to, or his world was close. It was small and it was contained. But once he stood up, his perspective changed, his reach changed, his confidence changed, his entire experience of the exact same room changed. He started walking across the house. Now he's just walking around, walking in the living room, walking to the kitchen, just walking to the different parts of the house now. Right? He reaching for new things. Now, all of a sudden, he can open doors and he can go into places. He can discover new angles. He can chase toys around that he could never even get to before. And so it wasn't the world that changed. It was his capacity. And that's one of the things that I want to share with our listeners today, is that as we grow, our capacity expands.
So here's what I know just happened, Robin, for our audience. They heard you talk about Jalen, but they saw themselves. And for many of us, we did not like what we saw. We were like, man, I remember when I used to be fearless. I remember when maybe some of us, myself included, I'm sitting here thinking, well, where in my life is it small? Is it compact? Is it close? Where have I not stood up yet? That's the leadership principle. When your ability grows, your access grows. Now, Robin, what you're telling us is, once we have the ability to stand up in leadership, in life, in the world, our access to these new drawers and doors, these new toys that we can chase, those new counters, or now I don't have to wait on mom, dad, grandparents to move me from one place to another place of prosperity, growth, or abundance. Robin, You got me
Exactly.
excited, sir. I'm getting
Exactly.
goosebumps over here.
Exactly, Neil. And here's the part that really struck me. He wobbled a lot, you know. He fell a lot, but he never judged the wobble. He didn't question the fall. Sometimes we kind of waited to see what he would do, man, but he never paused to ask, should I even be trying this? He simply got up and kept moving again. No, we all see it in the kids, but he just simply got up and kept going. You know what I mean, Neil?
Robin, I feel like you're not talking just about your grandson here. And so this is beautiful. And I can tell you, so when you brought this idea, it made me think about just how babies and kids, how they'll fail 50 times a day at the same thing. And so we say, don't make the same mistake twice. And so we'll make one mistake and then we just won't even try a second time. Babies are failing and falling 50 times, 100 times a day. And let me tell you how crazy babies are, Robin, how crazy these infants are. They will fail 50 times and still expect success.
So true.
And they're like, oh, like I fell, let me get back up. But adults, Neal, Robin, will fail once and expect disasters.
Ouch, Neil. That's a reality, and somewhere along the way we forget that falling is the path. We forget that wobbling is normal. We forget that progress is messy. That's the reality. That comes naturally, and we forget that along the way, Neil.
And so here's what we're going to do. Since you just mentioned what we forget, I think it's important for us to look at what babies know and what we as adults forget. And so one of them is that a 12-month-old has no concept of shame, embarrassment, comparison, or ego, right? They don't know to be afraid of looking inexperienced. They aren't concerned with, if I fall, my mom is going to talk about me. If I stumble, if I pull this thing down as I try to stand up, someone's going to say, I wish she would just quit.
Man, Neil, that's so powerful. And it's hitting me in between the eyes as I hear you say it. I think it's one of the greatest leadership killers. Adults are terrified of being seen learning.
Stop, Robin. Stop. We want to come out polished. Go ahead. I'm going to let you go.
It's true.
I'm like Kanye. I'm going to let you finish, but
Yeah,
we're afraid of that.
It's true. It's good to pause, man. But here to our listeners, you can't grow if you won't let yourself look like you're grown. Yeah, that might sound so simple, but remember it. You can't grow if you won't let yourself look like you're growing. Think about it. The babies, they crawl, right? They a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Then they try to start getting balance. It might take a step. It's a process that we have been through now here recently. So it's fresh in my mind. And then that step might turn into a walk where, okay, they take one or two steps and then kind of fall into you. That's how Jalen started. He would take a step and then as he's coming forward, he's falling into you, and then now he's all over the place, right? All through experimentation. Adults want to jump straight to mastery without the messy middle, the messy in between. Neil, I think of an example of that is public speaking.
Let's go.
Allow the fear of what others might think or what we might say or how it might come out or whatever, what we might do while we're up there that we don't even try it. And the truth is that we're going to be wobbly. The people who you see, I'm talking to our listeners, the people who you see and consider to be a great public speaker didn't start there. They went through the mess. Neal Oates Jr., can you speak to that a little bit? I mean, you're a great communicator. You've gotten awards. You're being invited all over the place to speak. Can you speak to that?
Absolutely, 100%. So the first thing that I tell everyone is that every expert was once a beginner. And so we believe that about other people. Be like, okay, but what did they do? There had to be a point in their life where divine intervention and the heavens opened up and God came down and just granted them with this gift or talent, right? But every expert was once a beginner. But then my mind always goes back to what our mentor, Dr. John C. Maxwell, says, is that I know you want what I have, but are you willing to do what I did? And so we talk about Dr. Maxwell now as the author of all these books and how many leaders that he has impacted. And he's like, man, when I was at my church, like they had no business listening to me. They never should have given me the opportunity, but they did. There was a messy middle part. And so I think that's the key of saying, yes, there is a messy middle. Am I willing to endure that part? And a lot of it, Robin, is going to be external. But I found that biggest piece is going to be internal. Once we become of age and we start knowing that there's a voice on the other side and the enemy starts attacking. But here's what the tragedy is, in my opinion. It's that most leaders think they lost their growth mindset, right? We say, well, no, it went somewhere. They didn't lose it. They just stopped using it. And that's what I have to say about that part. So thank you for allowing me to share. I do have a leadership parallel if you'll allow me to keep going, or do you have something right now?
No, please keep going, sir.
Okay, so now we're going to look at keeping the growth mindset. So if we didn't lose it, we just stopped using it. Here's how we keep that growth mindset, how we keep that mentality of a 12-month-old. So when I say, I want you to grow up, you're like, what? Yeah, I want you to think like a 12-month-old as a 1-year-old. Great leaders remain curious. And sometimes in society, in our own lives, that can be a scary word, right? They're not ashamed of learning. They still do this thing called explore, right? Think of them as a Lewis and Clark of new ideas. They still test and they still stretch, even and especially when it's either uncomfortable or scary.
Yeah, so this is the practical part of it. And I appreciate you going here, Neal. And we have a few adult versions of learning to walk that we want to share with you, right? A few adult versions of learning to walk. I love that. One is start something before you feel ready. Neal, you started anything recently? Because Neal is one of those that he starts something probably every day before he is ready. Start something before you feel ready. Asking questions even when you're the leader. It's okay for the leader to ask questions, letting yourself look inexperienced. I struggle with that. Sometimes I
Yeah.
hesitate to ask a question because of fear of what it might look like. Wow, I can't believe Robin doesn't know that yet. So that's an adult version of learning to walk, letting yourself look inexperienced.
Wobbling all over the place, huh, Robin? So he's like, I'm
Yeah,
wobbling,
exactly.
I'm grabbing on to, I'm looking at you, that I don't know.
Exactly. Another one, sir, is getting back up after disappointment. So after disappointment, yeah, we're going to be disappointed. We're going to fall. We're going to fail sometimes. We're going to wobble, as Neal just said. But get back up after disappointment. That's a version of learning to walk. And then saying, I don't know yet, but I can learn it, is another version of learning to walk.
So, Robin, as I hear you say that, once again, you know the way my mind works. I'm like, yeah, Robin, but I don't want to wobble. I don't want to look inexperienced. I don't want to get back up after disappointment. And so then I have to talk to myself about what's the consequence of that. What type of leader do I become if I'm unwilling to do that adult version of learning to walk? And what I think about is that if I'm that leader, then if I'm that leader who resists wobbling, that means that I'm that leader that never reaches walking. So leaders who resist walking, we never reach running. And so I'm saying, well, I don't want to do the hard work, the embarrassing stuff, the stuff that's going to break my ego, break my self-esteem from the outside in, right? But I want to walk, but I never get there. And so what hope can I ever have of running? And so really quickly, if I can give a quick story, Robin, I was playing golf with I wasn't playing golf. I was having a conversation with a guy. Actually, we were having a conversation with a guy who got frustrated over his golf game, but he never practiced golf, right? And so he's like, I get out there and I play and I'm frustrated at the results that I get, but I haven't put the work in. I haven't learned how to walk. I have not stumbled. And so that's what I think about as a leader. If I haven't put the work in and been willing to wobble, willing to hold on, willing to sort of fall a few times. And how can I ever expect to run or be good at this thing later on in life?
Hey, man, it's so true. That's a great example. And it's a pattern that we've had, this idea of wobbling before walking, or wobbling before playing golf, right? It's the same pattern that we had at 12 months old. It's the same pattern. Jalen is not the exception. Jalen is the norm. Well, what happened is we just stopped practicing it. That's what I want our listeners to hear. I believe if we can catch this, get a hold of this, what we're sharing with you today, it can transform your life, right? You just need to wobble a little bit more. You with me? And I love to share the story, Neal. I actually have it written down here, the Ben Carson story. Ben Carson developed a habit that opened his world. I mean, amazingly. I'm going to share some of that here to our listeners. It's a story that I've always loved because it mirrors this exact principle that we're talking about. Growing up in Detroit, he was failing in school. He was struggling with things like anger. He almost had no confidence whatsoever until his mother told him and his brother that they were going to start reading, and they were going to start reading 2 library books every week. 2 library books every week. And that became his version of learning to walk, right? And just like my grandson, Jalen, they started discovering new angles in a room. Books opened up new angles in Carson's mind. It gave him new vocabulary, new imagination, new understanding, new confidence. And it didn't just change his grades, it changed his direction. And here's the part that blows me away every time, folks. Ben Carson went from being mocked as the worst student in the class to becoming one of the most respected neurosurgeons on earth to today. He graduated from Yale, then from the University of Michigan Medical School. Then he joined Johns Hopkins, and at just 33 years old, he became the director of pediatric neurosurgery. You hearing me? The worst in his class, the worst student in the class, to the director of pediatric neurosurgery, one of the youngest ever, by the way. And then he performed a surgery that the world had never seen done successfully. He did the first separation of conjoined twins attached at the back of the head. This is a man who started out angry, discouraged, academically behind, and became a surgeon trusted with the most delicate procedures in modern medicine, all because of one new discipline, and that was of feeding his mind. What an amazing story, Neal.
Robin, when you say amazing, it's convicting for me. If I think about one of the greatest neurosurgeons in the world starting wobbling, and I do want to say, we have to thank Mama. We have to thank Mama Ben Carson, right?
Yeah, right on.
Because if she does not say, hey, we're going, like, son, baby, you've got to get back to wobbling and walking. Let's starting this thing. Then we don't have one of the greatest minds that ever existed in his space. And so he went from a struggling student to world-class surgeon, all because of one consistent habit. Robin, he reinforced this thing called resilience, and I'm going to try to walk and fail and walk and fail. And this is so perfect for the time of the year that we're recording and releasing this episode, but then also is perfect for the conversations that you and I have about the process, right? How you have to test and fail and do a reiteration and try it again and then come back. And so this is beautiful timing, because I know that while the audience is benefiting, that this episode is an episode that God especially ordained for me to receive today as well.
Right on, Neal. And I love the how you highlighted his mom, who was a single mom, by the way, and who struggled, worked several jobs just to try and put food on the table. So they came from very humble beginnings. But I love the way you honored parents. And if you're a parent today, I want you to consider what you can do to help your children to grow and to become all that they can be. I'm so proud of Jillian and Eric, Jalen's parents, because they read they read to him every night right now. So he loves looking at the books, and he's already reading, Neal. He's already reading. And what a great habit that they can help for him to grow up with. And the principle is the same for all of us, Neal. That's what we want to encourage our listeners with today. Growth unlocks access, right? Movement expands your world. And so one new discipline can redirect your future. Just like a 12-month-old learning to walk, Ben Carson learning to read opened up a whole new world for him.
Robin, every time I think that we have recorded the best episode that we could ever record, this podcast, the Big Life Podcast, meets me exactly where I need to be met. And so, as we always do, we like to make this thing simple enough for a 5-year-old. So you talk about breaking this down to a 12-month-old. I'm breaking it down to where it's the simple things. We want to make this applicable. And so let's make this personal for our listeners, for our audience, and really for each other. Here are 3 reflection questions. 1, where have you stopped exploring? Where did you settle for safety instead of growth? Right? So maybe we're that kid, and this does not happen, where we fail once and we just folded our arms and said, well, that's it. I'm just going to be carried for the rest of my life. So that first question, where have you stopped exploring? Number 2, where do you need to start wobbling again? This one might be harder than the first one, Robin. What new skill, habit, or step requires courage right now? So
That's good.
Robin, I've got to leave all of my excuses and the reasons behind. And I have to say, am I willing to wobble again? Maybe in public sight? And then number 3, what one small step would open up a new world for you? And here's what I said, Robin. I didn't say 10 steps, just 1. What's that one step that might open up a new world for you?
I love that, Neal, because you don't need a strategic plan to grow, right?
Stop right there. Hold on. So
That's what we're saying.
are you telling me that Jalen does not have a 15-step plan for walking?
Come on, right? You just need motion. You know, I just saw a video my daughter sent me this morning, just before we recorded this episode, of him sitting in the, oh, Neal, what's that thing they put, mulch? Not mulch, but similar to mulch, right? It's a dark colored mulch, and he's just sitting in it, and he's just playing with it, throwing up in the air, clapping his hands with it. And, you know, the point is, that's a form of him learning the environment.
Mhm.
You just need motion. You just need willingness. You just need the courage to take one wobbly step, and that will lead you to growth. Right, Neal? That's what you're saying.
Oh, that's right there. So we keep talking about Jalen. And so, Jalen, we love you. We can't wait to see what else you're going to teach us through Granddad and just through the life that you're living. But Robin, now I want to get personal. I'm going to get in your business because I just love learning about you, and you are that transparent spirit. What's the biggest personal lesson? And we don't want theory. We don't want ideology, right? What's the biggest personal lesson that your grandson has taught you?
Man, it's such a good question, Neal. And honestly, I think the thing that I've learned, or I'm learning, is that every major level of my life has come after a season of wobbling. That's the reality. When I look back at things, everything, single major level of life has come after a season of wobbling. Every breakthrough required some sort of awkwardness, being outside of my comfort zone first before the breakthrough came. And every new chapter required a beginner's mindset. Every new chapter required me to say, listen, I don't know this, and the only way I'm going to know this is to learn, step out there, take a step. Here's the truth for me, and maybe for someone listening to us today. Growth doesn't feel confident at first. It feels clumsy. And Neal, if I can be transparent with our listeners, I kind of shared it with you before we jumped on this call today also. It's helping me to recognize that I need to be doing that more, because I'm even reserved in that process, my friend. So one of the things is helping me to see is I need to actually get back to being just like a 12-month-old. and just start wobbling and getting back up and wobbling and getting back up and learning and recognizing that I'm inexperienced in those areas of my life. And the only way that I'm going to get there is by wobbling again. And so I need to be doing that even more now. Right. As I shared it with you, Neal, I acknowledged, and I want to do it publicly here. You're a guy that does that. I'm always hearing you doing different things. The other day you recently told me about something that you heard somebody shared that they were doing. And next thing I know, next week, you're doing it. And that's what it's all about. And I need to even get better at being that person that's doing that on a daily basis. Thank you for asking.
So Robin, on that, I heard you talk about that sometimes when you're trying to grow, that it feels clumsy, and that's how I feel like I live a clumsy life. So, and here's the hard thing: as someone who wants to be in the public light and have my bow ties on and be put together and make sure I always look and feel like I'm in control. Here's what I've learned about the growth: that a lot of times through life, I'm stumbling through life. I heard a quote, and I apologize for not knowing who said it. It says, "I still stumble. I've just learned to make it a part of the dance." Right. And
I
so
love
with
that.
that, when I think about feeling clumsy as we grow, I think that being clumsy is evidence of courage. Right. Clumsy is momentum. Clumsy is movement. And so a lot of times people say, well, do you see how he's over there struggling and he's doing this? But I'm like you said, it's just movement. And so it is that movement that has moved me into bigger, better rooms, environments, and opportunities that stagnation never would.
Yeah, that's so true, man. And when we take steps, when we move, it expands our world. Movement is what expands your world. When you step through one door, other doors open up. I literally saw that with my grandson as he started walking. When you take those steps, the world expands, just like a 12-month-old. And so, start wobbling, discover the power of walking. The more that we learn, Neal and I, we've grown together even as we have co-hosted this podcast, and we've taken steps. We've wobbled, but we've taken steps, and our world has expanded, and that's what we want to encourage you with. Thank you, listeners, for allowing me to share a little bit more about my grandson. That warms my heart, even just talking about him like we did today. But I hope the lessons that we have shared from that has added value to your life. Neal and I really believe that this can transform your world if you can just start taking those steps of wobbling.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, if this episode encouraged you, we're going to ask and encourage you to share it with someone who needs to remember that wobbling isn't weakness, that wobbling is actually growth.
Right on. So listen, you were born with a growth mindset. Remember that. You didn't lose it. You just maybe stopped using it, and it's time to bring it back. That's the point. You still have it there. We have to be intentional. You've heard us use that word because as we become adults, we allow things to get in the way. Fear of what others might think, fear of how we might look, just the mere fact of falling, getting hurt sometimes it might be, but whatever it is, we've stopped using it because we've allowed things like that to get in the way. And what we're encouraging you to do is that it's time to bring it back. Right, Neal?
Absolutely. And this may be a lie, but I did just get a text from Jalen, and he said, Granddad, you know that when you're recording this, when we release this, the holiday season is going to be right around the corner. So hopefully you're going to take care of the philosopher Jalen for the holiday, knowing that he is teaching us life lessons, that he has given us the gift of leading by example. So if whatever gift is under that tree, Robin, make sure that it comes from Neal, that it comes from the Big Life Podcast team, and that it comes from our audience and our viewers. And then we'll just cash app you the money on the back end, but make sure that Jalen is loved, that he's taken care of, and that he knows that he really is making a difference out here for us by being the leader, even unknowingly. So make sure you share your love with Jalen, his parents, because they've made us better this week, sir.
Amen. That's all I need is another reason, brother. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. So until next week, keep growing, keep stretching, keep living the Big Life. Make sure you subscribe, turn notifications on so that you never miss an episode. Who knows who we're going to talk about or what we're going to talk about next week? Robin and I, we aren't even aware yet, but here's what we do know. We know that God loves you. We love you, and there's nothing you can do about it. And until the next time we see you or you see us, we're right there with you. Peace.
Peace.
Robin,